digital storytelling and future marketing. How could the future marketing would be? So to acquaintance more about on this storytelling, digital storytelling and fusion marketing, we have Mr. Ankit Kathuria, marketing consultant, who is going to deliver the tips and tricks for digital storytelling and future marketing. So he brings with him a vast experience on the marketing and digitalization front. Having worked with the leading players like Uber, OLX, and Makemytrip, he has gained a holistic perspective on the online space. With exposure of working for different markets including Asia, Europe, and North America, he is working towards digitization of different aspects of business from consumer and market insights to product innovations, brand building, customer acquisitions, building communities, and word of mouth through brand advocates. Recently, he started advertising startups on growth and marketing strategy and implementations as his way of sharing knowledge and giving back to the ecosystem. So, with no further delay, we can call upon Mr. Ankit Kathuria to start up the session on digital storytelling and future marketing.
All right. So, thank you so much for the stage, Monisha. And thanks for the introduction. I was able to hear the introduction, but just after that, my computer hanged up. So the topic that I'm talking on today is essentially digital storytelling and future marketing. That's me. I think Monisha has already introduced myself. I've been working in digital companies for almost last 1 decade. Have been fortunate to be part of some of the largest internet brands globally, like Uber, OLX, Makemytrip, largely during their hyper growth phase, and got a chance to build the regional digital marketing infrastructure for these companies in different parts of the world. From a personal passion perspective, I just love being part of different conferences, teaching in different B schools on digital marketing topics. So yeah, that's essentially me. I won't spend a lot of time on that, and I'll just quickly move on the topic that I have to talk on today, which is digital storytelling and future marketing. While we talk about future marketing and digital storytelling, some of the things do remain same, which is essentially how you look at the entire consumer funnel, how you look at the entire marketing funnel. The only thing that has changed with the evolution of digital is actually how you cater to this entire funnel and the mediums and the means that you use in terms of converting throughout this funnel. So it's a very simple view that I'm trying to show here on how I look at a marketing or a consumer funnel, right? It essentially starts with brand awareness. What do you really do? What does your brand really stand for? What exactly it means to a user? What is that brand personality that you're trying to communicate? What is the core proposition that you're offering? After that, the next step is building brand consideration. Why should a consumer choose your brand vis-a-vis the other brands that exist in the same category? So this is an area where brand marketing plays a very important role. Of course, there's a lot of change that has happened over the years, where typical TV and radio and print advertising has transformed, and a lot of that budget has moved towards digital. And we'll briefly talk about how that shift is happening, and I'll walk you through a couple of examples on the same. After a user has started considering your brand, then comes performance marketing. And the role of performance marketing is essentially ensuring that the media mix that is being used to acquire new users is extremely optimized, right? Like, which are the different channels you are using, which are the channels which are more efficient in terms of volumes being generated, in terms of efficiency, what is the cost per user acquired. And the third element, which is also very important, is the quality of the user being acquired, right? So when you think of your performance marketing media plan, these are the three most important elements that you have to keep in mind. What's the scale being offered by different channels? What's the efficiency being offered by them? And then the quality. What's the lifetime value of the users being acquired through different channels? You definitely can't be myopic in terms of your overall performance media planning. which is why the next step becomes very important as well, because it's not just about getting traffic on your website or getting new app installed. It's also about activating to that traffic. How smooth is the user journey after that, and that's essentially where the third asset come into picture, which is your own assets, whether it's your website or your app or the entire CRM program that you follow. And for all purposes, I also try to include the social community that you have, right? Because businesses are not the same way that it was a few years back, right? It's with the emergence of social, people want to interact with you on social, and you have to build that community online as well, because these are the users who are going to spread your word of mouth, right? And it's very important for a marketer or for an entrepreneur to understand that there's no means of marketing that's as effective and as impactful as word of mouth. So it's very important that the owned assets like website and app are extremely optimized in terms of user journey. And then you're using your CRM program and your social community efforts to ensure that you're building a strong, loyal community of users who are not just coming back to your platform for incremental purchases, but are also spreading your word of mouth and getting you more referrals. So this is something that is core to me, and I look at the marketing funnel very closely whenever I'm given a task around it. So that's in a nutshell, what a conversion funnel looks like. But of course, we need to see on how does digital play a role in all of this. So I'll start with some of the examples on each of these aspects, and let's go through some of those case studies now. So the first one that I want to talk about is more on the top of the funnel, which is about, how do you create that brand consideration amongst users? How do you build that brand love amongst the prospect users? And this was with OLX, which is one of the largest online classified companies globally, largely present in India, Brazil, Philippines, Indonesia, some of the parts in Europe as well. And the idea here was that, how do we create a deeper brand connect with users? How do we position OLX as part of your life brand, right? We were fairly, aggressive in terms of the overall ATL plans, and people were getting to know about OLX. But then it was about how do we create that stronger connect with the user, because it's not just about telling them what OLX is, but it's also about how simple it is and how critical it could be to your daily life, right? And then the idea was that we don't want to do a fancy advertising campaign for this. We just want to recreate an old classic that connects with the user. And to do this, instead of going ahead with an expensive production house or a expensive advertising agency, we thought let's go ahead with some YouTube content creators, and we'll work with them on scripting of the entire idea and production. And then we'll have a partnership wherein we're not paying for the production, we are going to pay for the views, the organic views that we get on YouTube for that video, which essentially means that the content needs to be really powerful for you to get those organic views. So I would love to show that video. Unfortunately, the video here is in Hindi, but I'll just move to YouTube, wherein we have subtitles as well. So I'll just move my screen to that.
ये कहानी ख्वाहिशों की तुमने सुनी तो होगी। एक ख्वाब जी उठा था आंखें जहां बदलकर। प्यार के ही सिक्कों से आशियां भरा था, हर कमी थी गवारा प्यार में पिघलकर। पंख बड़े महंगे उस ख्वाब के मगर थे, वो पंख बस मोहब्बत पर झूमते नहीं थे, पर खासियत उम्मीद की है ढूंढ कर बहाने, फिर से कदम बढ़ाती है वो संभल संभल कर। ये कहानी बावरों की तुमने तुमने सुनी तो होगी। एक और ख्वाब चहका आंखें जहां बदलकर, भूल हसरतें अपनी सोच में पड़ा वो, महबूब के लिए दिल ने दी सदा मचल कर। पाक जो नजर हो, सच्चाई से भरी हो, कायनात करती है खेल फिर फरेबी। प्यार के सफर का तो है मकाम ये ही, इश्क पाए बरकत खुद अपनी लौ में जलकर। अपनों की ख्वाहिशों से कीमती और कुछ भी नहीं। OLX.in, कीमत भी कुछ कीमती भी।
This was a very simple and clean example of branded content creation, right? Because it's a very simple story that one could relate to, where a couple, where they're making sacrifices for each other's happiness, and then from somewhere OLX, features in as a tool or as a platform that they're just using, to achieve some of the basic aspirations they have in their lives, right? So that's a very simple example of how you can create branded content on digital. It allows you to have long time format. It allows you, it allows people to talk about it. Like if you look at these comments below, that just summarizes what this video is all about, right? Like it's just about their life. It's just about the common human emotions that we all go through, right? And how do you communicate that is really what storytelling is all about, right? And it's not just that the content is powerful in terms of being shared on social media or on digital media. It's also about what business impact it creates for you. And this of course was one of the most viewed ads, in fact the top most viewed ads during that time in the region. The views that we got on Facebook and YouTube were enormous. The like to dislike ratio was very healthy, but then at the same time it had a very strong business impact as well, right? Like there was almost 20% week on week growth in organic app installs. There was an immediate positive impact on Google Trends, which means that there were more people searching for OLX in the region. Typically, when you run a paid video on, I'm sorry, a video ad on YouTube, 90% of the views are paid and less than 10% are organic. And this is a stat shared by YouTube. For this video, for where you're creating content really, which is depicting a normal human life. We got 40% organic views, and less than 60% were views coming in from paid advertising on YouTube. We also did a brand lift study around it, wherein 61% of the users said that it's a better ad than any other in the category. 7 in 10 viewers after watching this ad wanted to try and recommend OLX. Now, that's a sizable number, right? So apart from all the organic coverage that we got on multiple media channels and so on, it also had a very strong business impact in terms of immediate traction, in terms of active users, as well as building brand awareness and brand consideration. So it certainly meets that purpose at a much lower budget than what you would have been required to spend had you been taking a campaign on TV and so on. For sure, TV you can't even run such a long video, right? So digital from that perspective takes care of a lot of those limitations that have been existing in traditional medium, and you can get away with all of those on digital. Now I'll just give you another example. It's slightly different. In the last one, it was more about the way the content was created. In this one, it is more about the timing of the content and what exactly you are trying to feature in that, right? So again, this is from the same brand, same category, OLX, and typically, you sell your old stuff when there's a life state change happening. So when you're moving from school to college, all the old things that you were using in school and you're not going to use in college, you would want to sell those. From when you move from college to your first job, you want to redo your house. A lot of things change, and you would want to sell the old things that you don't need anymore. When you get married, changing your house from a bachelor home to a married home, it's a lot of change, from furniture to appliances and whatnot, right? So we identified that, the use case for around wedding as a life stage change is very strong for the brand and the category. And then we just did some research on Google Trends, and we noticed that wedding or marriage related searches in India peak in April and May, which just corresponds to the wedding season. And then, at the same time, we were also thinking on what is the kind of content that actually spreads across digital medium. What is the kind of content that people like sharing? And these are some of the stats that we got from YouTube itself, that 49%, people like to share videos because it makes their friends laugh. So it's funny videos that do quite well on social media. So then our idea here was that, okay, we have identified the theme to be around wedding, because that's a very strong life stage change wherein users would want to explore OLX and possibly sell the old things that they don't need anymore. And at the same time, if the video is somewhat funny and the protagonist in the movie is someone who's more popular in that genre, it'll add a lot of flavor to that. Therefore, we just finalized one of the more popular stand-up comedians in the country, and we created 3 videos with him, all pertaining to different life stage changes around marriage. One is, when you just get married and you get a lot of unwanted wedding gifts. I'm sure, all the married people who are listening to this, they would have got a lot of those gifts that they don't really need, or they won't really use. But what do you do with those, right? Either you keep it in your cupboards and so on, or you could just sell those and actually make money with those. The second video was around, after marriage. When you get married, there are a lot of things that you buy around your marriage, including your wedding accessories and clothes, which in all probability you might not use again, right? And these are expensive things, right? So you could potentially sell these on OLX and make some money from those as well. The third video was, with once you have a baby, and as your baby grows up, all the things that your baby was using earlier are not really required, and then it's either a waste, or again, you could sell it and make some money with that. So we created these 3 videos, and the idea was that we launch it like a playlist with one following the other, so that we don't really have to spend individually as much for each of the video. And that actually turned out to be a quite effective strategy, because each video on an average was getting around 20% click through to the next video. So 20% of the people who were watching the first one, just by clicking on the playlist itself, for going on to watch the next video and so on. Because we were using a popular stand-up comedian for this, Mr. Kapil Sharma, we also leveraged the YouTube tag optimizations quite well. We leveraged his tags around his name and the other shows that he's been doing. I'll also show you this video on YouTube, because I'll have subtitles.
अरे चाचा जी नमस्कार, आइए प्लीज।
आइए ना।
कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशन। थैंक यू चाचा जी। बड़ा हैवी है क्या इसमें?
डिनर सेट, नई गृहस्थी जो बसा रहे हो इसलिए।
इसकी क्या जरूरत थी चाचा जी?
हाँ चाचा जी, इसकी क्या जरूरत थी?
बेटा ये तो मेरा फर्ज था।
अरे फर्ज क्या, तेल लेने में बोल रहा हूँ, जरूरत ही क्या थी इसकी? पहले 6 लोगों ने डिनर सेट दिया हुआ मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा, जिसको देखो डिनर सेट दे रहा है यार। सब हमारे घर में डिनर करेंगे क्या?
दे वापस, दे वापस। और मेरे वो आशीर्वाद दे वापस दे।
सबने तो सेम आशीर्वाद दिए होंगे ना, हैं?
इसमें मेरी क्या गलती है? मुझे भी किसी और ने दिया था।
मतलब आपको किसी ने चिपकाया, आप आगे मेरे को चिपका रहे हैं। गिफ्ट तो मैं देख ही रहूंगा। फोन है आपके पास?
नहीं, फोन नहीं दूंगा।
अरे एक सेकंड दो तो सही, एक सेकंड। ये लीजिए लिफाफा और इसमें डाल के अब आशीर्वाद दीजिए।
ये लो। हाँ।
पूरा डालो जितने का बिका है डिनर सेट। हाँ शुक्रिया।
ये लो और आशीर्वाद।
हाँ अरे आशीर्वाद रहने दीजिए।
हर साल ना जाने कितने लोगों की शादी होती है और कितने अनवांटेड गिफ्ट्स एक्सचेंज होते हैं। अनवांटेड गिफ्ट्स को OLX पे बेचिए, बिना गिफ्ट देने वाले की फीलिंग सेट किए हुए। दूल्हा दुल्हन के हित में जारी।
Sorry, I didn't realize that this doesn't have subtitles. So yeah, I'm not sure for people who don't know Hindi how much they would have been able to understand. But essentially, it's an uncle visiting a married couple, and he's gifting them a dinner set, and they've already got like a number of dinner sets, so they're not going to need it anymore. And then he just recommends to that uncle that sell this and give me the money that you make out of it, of course in a very funny and humorous way. Now, in terms of the impact that it has on business, again, while we got some good coverage on this on social media, it had a fairly healthy business impact as well, with 16% week on week increase in the business metrics, 5% increase in app downloads. We got more than 1.7 million video views for this, 53,000 plus video likes, and 5,000 plus video shares. Similar to the earlier video that I mentioned, this again, the entire playlist, the 3 videos that we had on an average had 45% organic views, which is very healthy compared to the benchmark that YouTube has. It also showed a healthy growth on Google Trends, which means that people were searching more about OLX after this campaign. So there was, from the brand study that we did immediately after this, we did see around 12% increase in brand salience amongst non-category users, which is very important, right? Because it in a way encouraged those prospect users who have not used the category before to actually try it out. And then there was also 16% increase in purchase intent, or basically, an intent to use the app amongst competition users, because with the kind of content it was and the way it was targeted, and the timing of that was fairly pleasing and attractive for the viewers as well. So this was more about the different type of content that you can create for brand consideration or brand awareness. There's one more approach that one could follow, and this is a slightly broader one, and essentially we could categorize it as future marketing. It's basically integrated marketing campaign approach, right? Because in today's world, you can't just think of having individual channels work in silos. It's very important that you're creating surround across channels, because it's the same user who you're reaching out to through your offline advertising, digital advertising, emailers, SMS. And if you don't have consistency in your communication across, then you're just confusing the user and you're missing out on the opportunity on creating that impact. So I'll just take an example of this brand by the name of Wunda, which is basically a carpooling app largely operating in Philippines. And our idea there was that how do we accelerate the user base growth and activation in Manila, and how do we really differentiate our brand positioning from ride hailing? Because it's not like a Lyft or Uber or Grab. It's not like a professional driver taxi services. It's basically, if you're going from home to office, if you find someone else on your way on that app, they can just carpool with you. So you can at max carpool twice in a day. So it's just matching similar profiles. And then if you feel okay after chatting on the app, and if you want to carpool together, you can do that. So it's almost like Tinder for carpooling. The insight here that we had, after a multiple round of conversation that we had with the users on ground, was that users were finding the entire carpooling process to be somewhat cumbersome, because taking detours from your route to pick someone is very difficult, especially for markets where traffic congestion is a huge problem, and Manila is definitely one of those markets. Users often were comparing it with ride hailing, with Uber and Grab, and always felt that those services are somewhat more convenient, and the safety and perceived inconvenience was a bit of a barrier for users to actually try carpooling. Uh, and it was, this one more thing that we learned about this market, and I think it's possibly fairly unique to Manila as a market, that the users in Manila really take pride in their network of carpooling friends. Like they're really happy about the network of friends that they've made by carpooling. So our strategy here was that, let's acknowledge this inconvenience, because it's definitely not as convenient as Uber, but then it's still worth it because it's way cheaper and you're doing something good, right? You're helping someone reach office or home quite conveniently. Based on that, we thought of this campaign theme to be it's worth it. And then we did an integrated marketing campaign wherein we ran digital videos on Facebook and YouTube. We did, this outdoor campaign, which was like an LED ad on the main highway, wherein you take like 2 to 3 hours to commute. So let me just start maybe with the video again, and this one is in English, so it should be easy for everyone.
Nakasave akong 10,000 pesos, nagkaroon ako ng 52 new friends, 5 months pa lang ako nagka-carpool. Pero ang pinakagusto ko sa carpooling is yung feeling na may natutulungan kang kapwa mo.
Every day, Kyle helps people just like her.
Alam naman natin kung gaano kahirap mag-commute sa Pilipinas, especially pag kasama ko yung 2-year-old daughter ko. We've tried so many options para mapadali yung commuting with her, pero wala talaga. But thankfully, I found Wonder app. Since then, di na kami nahihirapan.
Every Saturday, nag-volunteer ako dito, teaching public school students kung paano magsulat saka magbasa. Yung sa weekdays, sinishare ko yung empty seats ng car ko.
So could you imagine helping her or helping him while saving money and making friends and building a better future for them? Because when you add it all up,
It's worth it.
Again, very simple production, but just communicating the idea that, yeah, it's not as convenient as the ride hailing, but then it's worth it because you're saving money, you're making new friends, but beyond that, you're really helping someone, and that brings in a lot of feel good. So apart from that video and outdoor, we also did a lot of corporate activation because the idea was purely targeting corporate users. So we finalized and figured out a few corporate buildings, and we had these outdoors also around that. And then we were targeting specifically these users because the idea was that you have to activate these specific sectors within the city to ensure that drivers and riders are matching each other. And while drivers are on the road, we also wanted to not miss out on radio ads, which are quite effective in this market. This was an example of an RJ integration where the RJ is talking to a user and the money he has saved. So again, this was a very critical campaign for the company, and it had some healthy results for business as well, wherein we saw around 2.5x growth in weekly completed rides in Manila. And then there was 50% and 100% growth in weekly successful drivers and successful passengers, respectively, immediately following this campaign. Moving on to the next example, while we spoke a lot about the upper end of the funnel, now let's move a step deeper, which is more on the performance marketing side. And this is an example from Uber, wherein the goal was to increase the volume of first trips from new users. And for us, we were trying to identify which are those moments or which are those, localities where the probability of you looking for a ride is higher. And some very simple examples that come to your mind are airports, train stations, shopping malls, and so on. So the idea here was that, instead of targeting the entire city, can we just target some of these hyper localities, and we can contextualize the creatives to that targeted location, like you can see in this creative in the background, which just says that if you need an easy ride from train station, install Uber now. And this campaign, is essentially a case study with Google as well, wherein the hyper local targeting was very effective in terms of getting new app installs. And because the moment was right in terms of targeting users, the cost per install and the cost per first trip was much lower than what we were seeing on our other regular prospecting campaigns. So this again is a great example of how you really leverage the targeting capabilities of the platforms that exist, and how do you really take advantage of those for your business. Moving further down the funnel, and this is not really a case study, because it's a little tricky to share case studies which are very specific to customer lifecycle management, as it involves a lot of business oriented data. But I'm basically sharing a framework, something that I've been using all my life, in terms of how to ensure that after you've got a new user, after you've activated the user, how to ensure that the user moves from the beginner stage to the loyal stage. So there's a very simple framework, right? The user journey is moving horizontally from beginner to performer to mature to loyal. But a lot of users, while they're transitioning from one stage to the other, they might move down vertically by being inactive or dormant or lost. So there will be some churn happening. But how do you revive them back forms a very, very critical part of your overall customer lifecycle management strategy. So it's a basic framework that I use, which can actually be customized to any specific business. And how you should go about it is that you should try to break down your customer segment in each of the buckets that you see: beginner, performer, mature, loyal, and then beginner inactive, beginner dormant, beginner lost. Similarly, performer inactive, dormant, lost, mature, inactive, dormant, lost, and so on. And then for each of that segment, you need to customize your strategy in terms of the emails that you're sending, push notifications or SMS, or any specific offers that you would want to set it up for the different segment. Because a user that's at a beginner stage and is becoming inactive, the trigger to get them back would be very different from a user who was loyal and has become inactive. So you cannot have one trigger that will work across. So you need to break down this entire consumer base into much smaller customer segments to be able to personalize your messages and your offerings. So that brings my presentation to the end, and I'm happy to take questions from here.
Definitely an informative speech on digital storytelling and future marketing, Mr. Ankit. Like this, right now we can move for the question and answer session. Online participants, like whoever having any other queries, like post upon your questions on chat box, and then get clarified, Mr. Ankit, and then he'll be available right now for the question and answer session. Question is on growth hacking through storytelling. First question, like Ms. Monisha's first question is growth hacking through storytelling.
Absolutely, it's absolutely possible, and I think the example that we gave for Wonder, for example, was purely growth hacking through storytelling. Because what we realized was that while we were advertising on performance marketing and so on in that market, people were just perceiving us as another ride hailing company, while we were not. It was a completely different business model. So the idea was that let's acknowledge the challenges that users face while carpooling, but then let's tell our story to them as well on how it is different and why it's worth it. And then clearly the impact was visible in terms of business performance immediately after that. But what's important, while you're trying to rapidly grow with storytelling, is that you need to understand the pulse of the users. You need to have storytelling which is very specific, based on consumer insights. So that's the key, according to me.
Yeah, here comes the second question, Mr. Yeah, here comes the second question. How far emojis used in storytelling?
Okay, so I think it depends on the medium that you're using. I'll give you an example. Like I've seen emojis work quite well in push notifications, for example. So that if that's a medium that you're using, then yes. But one thing that you have to be very careful of is the cultural sensitivity around emojis, right? Especially when you're running campaigns across the globe, because the meaning of one emoji could be slightly different in different cultures. So you just need to be a bit cautious on that.
Okay. So here comes she asked for the third question. How to promote WhatsApp group through storytelling?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. WhatsApp is becoming such an integral part of the way businesses run today that literally all the marketers are trying to find ways on how to leverage that tool. And in a way, Facebook is also catching up, with the launch of WhatsApp for Business and so on. Um, I think in the markets where WhatsApp for Business is launched, it's relatively easy because you can have your page and you can uh, you know um, um, try to customize the communication there. It's still in its early stage, I would say, because the kind of limitation that exists around the tool itself doesn't really allow you to do as much. But especially for small businesses, if you certainly can create content, and you can certainly, the lingo that you use in WhatsApp could actually be that differentiator, right? Because when you communicate on WhatsApp, the terminologies that you use is very different than an email communication. If you can use that while replying back to your customers on WhatsApp, in a way, you have already customized, and in a way, you've already, initiated the storytelling process somewhat differently and somewhat more customized for that tool.
Okay, so here comes with the fourth question. Is storytelling strategies for various social media platform with respect to personal branding?
Uh, okay, okay. So again, when you're running video campaigns on different social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, you have to customize your content for each of these channels. Facebook, for example, most of the times users are watching videos on mute. So it's very important that you have supers so that even if you're not listening to the audio, the supers are communicating the story. YouTube, on the other side, is very different, where people are actually, listening with audio on, and music actually plays a very, very important role on YouTube video. Twitter, on the other side, is completely different, right? It's about how quirky you can be with those character limitations that you have. So it's very important, irrespective whether you're doing this exercise for a personal brand or for a larger consumer brand, you have to cater to each of these channels differently. The overall campaign umbrella or the theme could be the same, but you will still have to adapt that for each of these channels.
Yeah, okay. So here is a last question from Monisha. How to apply artificial intelligence in digital storytelling?
That's an interesting one. I'm not sure if anyone has really tried that. Um, I think one way could be that some of this content creation is also taking a form of marketplace, wherein you give brief to a platform, and then different content creators who are on that platform get that brief, and then they work on that brief, and then you get an opportunity to pick the content creator you would want to go ahead with. I think over time, the way this brief is created and the way it reaches out to different content creators, that's where AI could play a role. Right now, it possibly depends on the number of content creators that are there on the platform, those might not even have as good an understanding of the category or as good an understanding of the type of content that you're trying to create. I think AI could further enhance that matching process.
Okay. So, Miss, next question from like Monisha, how to use social media analytics to storytelling engagement?
Okay, another great question. I think I gave briefly some example of the analytics that we track on YouTube or Facebook with respect to specific video content that's posted. Some of the good measures, especially typically when you run campaigns on social, you look at the overall impressions or views or likes or shares that you've got, but you somehow miss on the next level of detail there, like how many people are really liking your content versus disliking. So I call it likability index, which is the ratio of like to dislike on YouTube, and that's a good indicator for you to know that whether your content is really liked by people or it's being disliked, because you won't get that view with the overall video views and so on. Especially if you are pushing paid media behind it, you will get views. I mean, that's simple, right? You will get video views, but that's not really an indicator of campaign success. What's indicator of a campaign success, as a quick social engagement view, is the like to dislike ratio. The other ratio that I look at is the shareability index, which means that how many people out of those, how many people who have watched the video are actually sharing it. Again, like I said, you will get views on Facebook or YouTube if you're putting media money behind it, but the success of that campaign in terms of social engagement lies in how many of those users who have watched your video are liking it or are sharing it. So these are the two metrics that I look very closely.
Okay, so here comes up the next question, Mr. Ankit. How Indian storytelling is different from other countries across globe?
Yeah, so see, the storytelling process has some cultural nuances in it, right? Like the example that I showed you for India and for Philippines was slightly different, right? The humorous nature of one of the content in India would possibly not work in a different market. So I think even if the insight is same, even if the theme is same, how you tell the story would differ in Indian context vis-a-vis, in Europe or Southeast Asia or Middle East or North America, right? Because the human emotions, or let's say the emotional triggers for the users are very different. In fact, even in India, I've noticed the kind of content that works in North India might not work in South India, and the kind of content that works in South India just might not work in Kolkata, for example. So you have to understand those cultural nuances while you are creating that content. The example that I'd shared with you, which was the Kapil Sharma example, the wedding gift video, that was largely for North India because the protagonist is more popular there. The way the marriage functions are conducted are somewhat more depicted like that in North India. That video might not have done as well in South India if you would have launched that. So understanding the cultural nuances of each of the markets where you're creating content is very important because the emotional triggers are very different in each market.
Okay, so here comes the next question. Susmit asks, how to avoid videos ad skipping as some people skips them. So how to avoid, what should be done for that particular thing?
The key here is the first 5 seconds. I mean, if you can get the user's attention in first 5 seconds, you've won that battle, right? So typically, what brands do in these first 5 seconds is that they try to create some level of curiosity amongst users on what the story is coming, or they'll ask a question which will intrigue you to watch more. But if you just don't have anything like that, and you think it's the skipping of ad is inevitable, then my advice would be that try to showcase a bit more of your brand in first 5 seconds, so that even if a user skips the ad, at least it's creating some brand recall.
So Jablil asked, so an OLX ad for India would be different to, for instance, an OLX ad for China.
Absolutely.
Kindly, Mr. Ankit, she's a deaf person, so that you can respond it in the chat, so that she can able to know it.
Right, I think we can move to the next question.
So Mr. Daryl asked, what is the most valuable digital tactics for small business owners?
I think for small business owners, it's about picking out a few social channels. Like if you have WhatsApp for business in your region, that's a must do. And then try to build an engaging community on these social channels, right? Try to keep the users updated on what's really happening around your business, and how is it relevant for them, and encourage them to actually refer more users. So I would say try to build a solid social community and use referral programs as a tool, especially if you are in that early small business growth stage.
Last question. What are the major tools for digital storytelling?
I think medium could differ from market to market. For example, if you are trying to target users in India, you would potentially rely heavily on Facebook and YouTube. If you are, say, moving to Dubai, for example, Instagram would play a much bigger role. If you move to Saudi Arabia, for example, Twitter would be a much stronger lever for you. If you move to China, then it's WeChat all the way. So these are the different tools that you could use, or these are different mediums that you could use for storytelling. And it actually depends on the market that you're targeting. But the approach that needs to be consistent is it needs to start with some kind of consumer insight. What is the insight? What are we really addressing? And then the tool or the medium that you use is essentially dependent on the market you're targeting.
Okay. So I think so. Most of the questions have been answered by you itself. Mr. Ankit, kindly share your mail ID also, so that if any other participants need to get clarified with you, so that they can mail you and then get clarified regarding the digital storytelling and future marketing.
Email
Okay.
ID, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ankit. That is a wonderful session with you. So it is so interactive also. Thank you. Yeah. Bye bye. Have a good day. Bye bye.